Today's Kantian footnote comes from the Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals, and it is footnote 23 on page 37 of this Hackett edition. This comes right after Kant has introduced the end in itself formulation of the categorical imperative, and now he's working through the examples of different kinds of duties he's previously discussed, explaining how they relate to this new formulation. I'll first give you the paragraph that it's a footnote to, I'll give you the footnote, and then I'll come back and explain what I think Kant is telling us here. Here's the paragraph. Second, as concerns necessary or strict duty to others, the man who intends to make a false promise will immediately see that he intends to make use of another man merely as a means to an end which the latter does not likewise hold. For the man whom I want to use for my own purposes by such a promise cannot possibly concur with my way of acting toward him, and hence cannot himself hold the end of this action. This conflict with the principle of duty to others becomes even clearer when instances of attacks on the freedom and property of others are considered. For then it becomes clear that a transgressor of the rights of men intends to make use of the persons of others merely as a means, without taking into consideration that, as rational beings, they should always be esteemed at the same time as ends, that is, be esteemed only as beings who must themselves be able to hold the very same action as an end. Footnote. Let it not be thought that the trivial quod tibi non vis fieri, etc., do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself, can here serve as a standard or principle, for it is merely derived from our principle, although with several limitations. It cannot be a universal law, for it contains the ground neither of duties to oneself, nor of duties of love toward others, for many a man would gladly consent that others should not benefit him, if only he might be excused from benefiting them. Nor finally does it contain the ground of strict duties toward others, for the criminal would on this ground be able to dispute with the judges who punish him, and so on. In this footnote, I think Kant is telling us that the so-called silver rule, do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself, is not an adequate replacement for his end in itself formulation of the categorical imperative. He says it cannot serve as a universal principle, and it is in fact derived from this end in itself formulation of the categorical imperative. He gives three reasons. He says it cannot possibly ground duties to oneself. So I have duties to myself that are covered by this end in itself formulation of the categorical imperative. I have a duty perhaps to develop my own talents to the maximum degree. I have a duty not to commit suicide. These would not be covered by the silver rule. Second, he says, duties of love toward others, and he gives the parenthetical example. Many people would agree, if you don't do any good for me, I won't do any good for you, and we just maintain a sort of desert island distance from each other. Kant seems to say this glosses over our positive rational duty of beneficence, to attempt to help other people, to have goodwill and benevolent action towards them. That would be left out of the silver rule. The silver rule would seem to say purely negative duties only, hands off. If you keep your hands off me, I'll keep my hands off you. And then finally, it does not contain the ground of strict duties towards others. The criminal would be able to dispute with the judge. The best example I can think of this would be the criminal might say, look, I wouldn't send you to prison for doing what I did. You shouldn't send me to prison for doing what I did. In other words, the silver rule here is not going to cover enough of our moral possibilities to be a genuine moral principle. It can be at best a kind of handy guideline to action or decision making as we're going about our day-to-day business, but it's not going to serve in moral philosophy as a kind of foundational grounding principle. It's not abstract enough. It's not general enough. To get that, we need to go to the to the end in himself formulation of the categorical imperative. Treat every human being as an end and not merely as a means. So that's my quick explanation of this Kantian footnote, footnote 23 on page 37 of the Hackett edition of the Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals. I hope you found this helpful today. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.